I'm Tim and welcome to a slightly different video for Joe's channel. Not sure there's going to be much interest to many people, but we are at the end of this season going to be selling Salty Sea Dog. So I thought I'd do a bit of a video to show people who might be interested in buying it around the boat, give us some of the good, the bad, and also give some ideas for if I was keeping the boat, what my next projects would be. So starting up at the front of the boat with our ground gear, which is one of the first things I upgraded in 2020. We've got I think it's a 15-pound, 7-kilo Manson Supreme anchor on about 25 meters of 6mm chain, with about 40 or 50 meters of road spliced onto that. Got to say, this has been absolutely a great purchase for the boat. We anchor quite a lot and we've never had issues with dragging. I've never had to reset it. It's a great bit of kit and will sort of hold you in any conditions that we've come across so far. The head sail, like the mainsail and the storm jib that we've never used but it also comes with the boat, are all best described as serviceable but tired. Certainly would probably benefit from an upgrade and new sails. The head sail, I had some work done about a year ago. I had a new UV strip and a couple of repairs done it, and at the advice of the sail guy said it was perfectly fine to keep going with it. We've got a Plastimo roller reefing on the front, or roller furling system. Again, it's quite old, it's serviceable, it's not the best thing out there, but it certainly gets the job done. Got a solid stainless steel pulpit on the front, it's nice and good. There are guard wires that come with the boat. We've never used them because the access up and down side of the boat is quite tight, and it's kind of generally felt that it would make it more awkward than safer, so we don't bother using them, but they will come with the boat. Moving back to the mast, the mainsail again is serviceable but pretty tired, as you can probably see on the photos. In 2020, I believe it was, or 2021, we had a new sail bag and laser jack system put on it, which has made managing the mainsail a lot easier. I will say that if I was going to keep the boat, one of the next projects that I would certainly do is probably do a lot of work on the rigging, the running rigging that is. Not that there's anything particularly wrong with it, I just want to get it set up in a bit more of a easy to use and run more of it back to the cockpit so it's a bit safer and easy to use without having to go up on the cabin roof all the time. Moving back into the cockpit, we've got a pretty decent spray hood. It's showing its age a little bit, but it's still perfectly serviceable and does provide a lot of shelter from the wind and rain. Up on the deck here, we've got a lot of the lines running backwards, but as I said, I'd like to, if I was keeping the boat, do a bit of work to run some more of the lines back here. And we do have some spare brakes and runners up there on the deck that could be used, so it wouldn't be that big a job. If I was going to keep the boat for another year, I think my winter project for this year would be basically doing a lot of sort of cosmetic work on the upper deck. There's nothing that I think is particularly serious, but there's lots of bits and bobs where previous owners have removed stuff and haven't done necessarily the greatest job of sealing it up, and stuff where I've done the same thing. And I think spending a week, sanding a lot of this stuff down, repairing some of the gel coat in places, and then just painting the whole top deck would really transform this boat. Again, not something that's particularly necessary. I don't think there's any structural issues in that regard, but it would make it look a lot nicer and get rid of some of this sort of yellowing that you get from boats after a few years of not being redone. On either side, we've got two Barton single-speed winches, which are the sheets for the head sail. Again, perfectly good condition, perfectly serviceable. There's a minute bit of play in each of them, but certainly nothing that I would be concerned about, and obviously a service in a few years' time would take care of that. Main sheet is on this runner here at the front of the cockpit. The rope for the main sheet was replaced, I believe in 2020. Good quality solid stainless steel blocks, and yeah, not had any problems with this at all. Back here we've got the power plant. This is an outboard version of Leisure 23. It doesn't have an inboard, which I think in many ways makes life a bit simpler. What we got on there is a 2019 Honda 6 horsepower 4-stroke engine. Again, one of the sort of earliest things I upgraded. Really great bit of kit, has to date not missed a beat. We've done about 10 weeks of sailing, so she's had a little bit of use, but she's still, I would describe as very new. She's been serviced after every season, freshwater run through, new filters, etc, etc. Yeah, absolute brilliant engine, pushes us along quite comfortably, about 5 knots, depending on obviously the wind and tide, and that's at about 50% power, so she's got a lot more in there when it's needed. She's also got a 6 amp charging coil, which means that when it's running it is actually charging up the battery bank, which allows you to stay off grid for a lot longer. Because they don't do a remote control system for the engine, I've rigged up the sort of tiller extension, which allows you to easily do the throttle from here. And then I've got this sort of modified boat hook here, which is attached to the gear lever, which allows you to easily change from forward, reverse and neutral without having to lean back over the back of the boat. We also have a Raymarine ST1000 Plus auto tiller. Really great bit of kit, steers the boat really reliably, and that's all wired in and set up back here for easy use. Back locker here is the internal fuel tank. It's a 38 litre petrol tank, which gives you a lot of range. I've never really figured out exactly what the usage is, but my thinking is it's probably around, if not less than, a litre an hour. So that gives you about, let's say, 35 hours of use from one tank, which is, you know, in the region of 150 to 180 miles, which is pretty good for a boat of this size. Below the waterline, obviously I can't show you right now. She's in pretty good condition, I think. You know, no obvious signs of osmosis. There's a couple of, you know, these sort of little hairline cracks that you get in places on these older boats. Again, not something that I've ever been particularly worried about. There is one of the chain plates where it mounts to the deck. Somebody before has done a pretty dodgy repair on it. I've been monitoring it for the 3-4 years that we've had the boat, and it hasn't changed, it hasn't had any issues with it. But it is something that, you know, again, if I was going to do the top deck work, I would probably pull that chain plate off and repair it properly, or at least do a better job of it. The boat was re-rigged this year, so in 2022, full new standing rigging, had a new adjustable backstay. I spoke with the people who did the re-rigging. You know, it's not ideal, but they didn't have any particular concern, particularly with it being one of the chain plates that goes right down into the hull. We re-antifouled the boat in 2021, I believe it was, and we rubbed it all the way pretty much back to the gel coat and did a really sort of thorough job of doing that. It's probably going to be due another re-antifoul next year, depending on how long you leave it in the water for, but it should only really need a pretty light rub down and repaint. You shouldn't need to go all the way back. Say we did a pretty good job, or Joe did a pretty good job of smoothing things out. The keels are solid, there's no sign of any splaying, there's no kind of issues there's no issues with the bolts underneath, they all look pretty solid, there's no cracking or anything like that looks like it's causing any issues. One thing I would probably do, that if I had kept the boat, is I'd spend a bit of time on the keels. We re-antifouled them, but we didn't spend a huge amount of time. I think with a few days of sort of grinding them smooth, putting some kind of fairing compound on it to smooth them out a bit, you could actually get them to come out really nice. But again, they're generally in pretty decent and solid condition. I don't think they're going to need any major work. So moving down below, Leisure 23, part of the reason we chose it, has got some pretty generous living space given the size of the boat. It's got pretty decent head height, and it makes good use of the space that is down here. So on the starboard side, you've got the main seating area, which also this table drops down, and you can also create into a double bed if you want to. On the port side, you've got the kitchen area. So you've got your cupboards, your drawers, sink with tap. And we also installed a new all stainless steel hob and grill. That's a Neptune 4500. I believe we installed that in 2021. Great bit of kit. You can cook anything you want on it. The grill's powerful, the hobs are powerful. Up here at the front of the boat, you've got the main V berth. This is generally the one we use for bed. It's currently in daytime mode, hence the mess, and that's so that we can have the toilet available. It's a Jabsco toilet. I replaced the whole pump unit this year, and I've serviced all the seacocks and they all work fine. There's no holding tank, it is a straight overboard, so obviously you've got to be sensitive about when you use it. But yeah, all works, functions perfectly, no leaks or anything like that. So one of the things they did in 2021 was fully replace all the water system. These, by standard, they come with a galvanized steel tank, which I think was the original tank, and it was leaking and rusted and horrible. So I cut that out, and I've actually replaced it with a pretty simple system. It's essentially just a 25 litre drum that's in here, which is then piped through to the sink in the kitchen. It's a pretty good system because it's simple. You can take out the barrel at any point if you want to clean it. If you want to replace it, it costs about £6 or £7 to replace one of these. And it provides enough water for us for a few days. And we also just carry a couple of 20-litre flexible water tanks that we can just top it up from. Like I say, it's a nice, simple, easy to clean system that didn't cost a fortune. So when I replaced the water system, I put in a whole new piping all the way to here, a new tap, and underneath the sink down here is actually a charcoal filter, which helps to keep the water nice and fresh and tasting okay. Down here, she's pretty standard layout. You've got lockers underneath here, underneath the opposite side, fair bit of storage space all around. She's pretty good down here, pretty dry. As I said, as part of what I would do if I kept the boat, when I was redoing the deck, I would probably redo the windows. They don't leak particularly. There's a couple of spots which, if it's really rainy, you can get a drip or two through, but they're not too bad, to be fair. And remedial work that we've done has done a pretty good job of sealing it up. Fortunately, on this design of boat, the windows are just sandwiched against the fiberglass, so you can see all these bolts around the windows. To take them off, all you really need to do is remove all those bolts, peel the windows off, clean off the old sealant, and then just reseal them. So it's not a huge job, but it's something that you want to be able to give yourself a couple of days to do. Other than that, the Leisure 23 is a double skinned boat, so you haven't got the outside, you've actually got another layer in here, which does help a lot with things like sound deadening, insulation, and also the condensation, which is always a factor in these kind of boats. It's not a perfect solution, and we'll say up in the V-berth, you do get a little bit of condensation which builds up underneath the bed over time. That's why we've got that sort of waterproof sheet down there. Again, it's just part of the course. I've seen people who have done things like sticking carpet to the walls and stuff like that, which I think can be quite effective, but it's not something that we ever really got into. Previous owner did go around and stick a load of carpet tiles on the walls, which exists still underneath the table here and in a few places. They didn't do a great job of it. There's nothing particularly, doesn't cause any particular issues. It's just left some unsightly sort of glue marks and things like that. But doing a slightly better job of that, I think, would probably make a big difference with the condensation. Another major upgrade we did to the boat was basically completely replacing all the electrics on the boat. Underneath me here is the main battery. It's a 200 amp hour, not AGM, but a sealed battery. That was replaced this year, so in 2022. It runs to feed the main switch panel that's here. So I sort of built and rewired everything on the boat in 2021. All of the main switches are here, which control all the electronics on the boat. You've also got a USB and 12-volt socket here, and a main socket with USB ports for when we're on shore power, as well as housing all of the wiring and the fuse panel for everything on the boat. You've also got the solar charge controller on here. It's got a 60-watt solar panel on the top. And you've also got a charge monitor which tells you what's left in the batteries. In 2021 I installed a Humminbird Helix 5, which is a combined chart plotter and fish finder. It's linked to a through-hull transducer, which actually doesn't have to go all the way through the hull, it's just stuck to the hull down here in the bilges. Works great. It's got Navionics charts on it. They haven't been updated in a year or two, but so far for where we are, they seem pretty accurate. And yeah, it's a great bit of kit. I've mounted it on this swing arm. Basically, I wanted to be able to use it inside as well as outside. Often in the evening when you're on anchor, you want to keep an eye on your position, stuff like that. So it's actually mounted on this swing arm, which allows you to swing it out and have it sort of stuck here in the companionway. And then we just use a bungee to hold it in place, which means you can then just push it out the way as and when you want to come into the companionway. Also installed a new VHF radio, so we've got a Cobra Marine GPS. It's a modern radio, DCS calling, plus automatic GPS transmission of your location in the event of a distress call. There's a VHF radio on the top of the mast. The signal on it can be a little bit hit and miss. When I had some work done on the mast last year, they kind of cut the line, cut the cable for it. Next time I get the mast down, if I was keeping the boat, I would probably look to certainly replace the cable and possibly the antenna as well, just so it's done. But yeah, it works, it's functional, and it does what it needs to do. Inside the cabin, we've also got LED lighting on both sides. There's also an LED light up in the V-berth, and all of the running lights, the two side running lights, the rear one and the anchor light, have all been made into LED lights as well. A couple of other sockets are installed up in the V-berth there. I've installed another socket similar to this, so you've got a 12-volt and USB just for charging your phone when you're in bed and stuff like that. And down below on the actual battery, there's also another 12-volt socket, which is what we use for the fridge. The fridge isn't going to be coming with the boat because we need it on our next boat. But you know, this is a pretty decent fridge, and this system will run it for pretty much indefinitely, depending on how much you're using the engine and how much sun you get. The boat also has an AIS receiver on it. To be honest, it's something that I got on a bit of a deal because a shop had it for someone and they didn't want it, so they gave me a good deal on it. I've installed it on the boat, but I've never actually set it up. It needs a splitter for the VHF cable so that it can run off the same antenna, and to be honest, it's just not something that I've had particular need for, but it is on the boat, and as far as I'm aware, it's brand new and functional. It just needs to be set up. In the back locker is where the shore power connection is. It's got about a 25-meter cable with it, and it's also got the circuit breaker box back here, which controls the main socket as well as the battery charger. Underneath the main fuse panel as well, there is a built-in battery charger. So as soon as you plug into shore power, it automatically starts charging up the main battery bank. Pretty nice bit of kit. You can also switch it over to just power the 12-volt circuits directly from it, but I've never really bothered with that. Like I say, with the solar, the engine and the shore power, we've never really struggled for battery power. The boat also has a NASA depth gauge and a NASA log. The chart plotter does have a depth sounder on it, so it actually gives a fairly accurate depth, but you have got the backup there, the NASA one. The log functions, but the sensor itself is not functioning. One of the previous owners thought it was a good idea to anti-foul the paddles on the log, which has basically gummed it up and stopped it working. My guess is that with a little bit of sandpaper and some thinners, you could probably clean it up and get it working again. Worst case scenario is you could replace it, and they're not hugely expensive for those kind of sensors. But because we've got the speed over ground on the chart plotter, it's just never been a priority for us to fix it because we don't need it particularly so. But I'm pretty sure it could be fixed and brought back to life. So other than that, the boat's pretty well equipped. Down in the main locker here, we've got enough fenders to really comfortably do one side, and if you stretch them out, you can just about cover both sides. There's also 3 mooring ropes, which were brand new about a year ago. There's a couple of extra warps in there. There's buckets and all kinds of stuff. So everything you kind of need to get the boat in the water and go sailing. So I've tried to be sort of honest and sort of upfront. Obviously there's lots of quirks of these kind of boats. I'm not a professional surveyor. None of this should be taken as guarantees or warranties or anything like that. You need to, if you take on board a project like this or a boat like this, you need to understand what you're getting yourself into, or you need to bring in someone professional who can look at it properly for you. But we've done about 10-11 weeks of long-term sort of cruising over the last couple of years on this boat, and she's never let us down. We've been through some pretty rough conditions at times. She's real stable, always looked after us, and has accounted for our fairly low skills when it comes to sailing. So anyway, if you are interested in the boat, check out the description below the video. That'll show you where you can find out more information and where you can get in touch with us if you want to come see the boat and are interested in buying her. But yeah, hopefully that's helped you out a bit, and look forward to seeing you in the future.